Welcome to the Totally Honest Cooking Show. As always, I'm Mark. Today we are delving into the land of voodoo sorcery known as baking. And in front of me, I have the recipe for my mother's cheesecake, lovingly made when I was a wee child, lovingly stolen from a woman she used to babysit for in the sad years before I graced the earth with my presence. And today, we are going to attempt to make this with a couple little tweaks. So we're going to start off. We've got 3 stages. We've got the crust, we've got the filling, we've got the topping. We're going to start with the filling so that once we do the crust, we can just pour the filling right in there, right? We're going to start, according to our recipe, with 3 8-ounce packages of cream cheese. Jesus, boxes and boxes. Okay, so we've got our cream cheese in our electric mixer. If you don't have a fancy electric mixer, you can use a hand mixer. That's how it was mixed for most of my childhood. I'm using the whisk attachment on the grounds that we always used a hand mixer for this when I was a child, so why not? Yeah. So, the directions say beat the cheese till it's soft. So that's what we're doing. Oop, probably ought to lock that. Oops. And at this point, I'm noticing why I should have used the paddle mixer, because with an electric mixer, you can get in there. Ooh, that's a whoopsie doodle. Doot. Jerkins, cut all of that. Okay, so we're back. We're using the paddle attachment because if you accidentally use the whisk attachment like some kind of moron, you will make, it'll get stuck and you don't want that. Nobody, but who's silly enough to do that? Anyway, we're creaming our cream cheese with this stuff until it's soft. You may have to occasionally get a spatula out and knock it out. Oh, also before we continue, I should remember to tell you, preheat your oven at this point to around 300 degrees or 300 degrees. Yeah, 300 degrees. Did you get that? 300 degrees? And we're just beating this till it's soft. You may have to occasionally twiddle it out. Okay. So we're adding 5 eggs one at a time. Oops. 1. 2. 3. 4. 5. Okay, so notice that it mixes a lot better once it's got the eggs in it. So, just going to point that out. But again, if you do have a solid paddle or a hand mixer, you might find this a little easier. If this is your first time watching the Totally Honest Cooking Show, welcome. It's the show where a regular guy tries to cook things. I have no training. I pretty much taught myself to cook, for well or for woe. And now I'm trying to show people that anyone can cook. You don't have to grow up cooking, or you don't have to go to school for cooking. Anyone can cook, just like the rat in that Pixar movie said. Now we're adding 1 cup of sugar. And we're adding 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla. Now, for those of you that are like, vanilla is expensive, you don't have to get real vanilla for this recipe. The only time you really need real vanilla is if vanilla is in the name of the recipe. If it's a signature flavor, then you need to spend the money and get real vanilla. You can use artificial. I'm using pure vanilla extract, but you don't have to. So that's 1 teaspoon. That's 1/2 teaspoon. Actually, it's probably a little more than 1/2 teaspoon. Now we're gonna open this up and scrape down the edges, because I get the feeling that there's a lot on the edges. Always scrape down the edges. Let that go again for another minute. I'm gonna wash my hands. Okay, I switched back over to the beater attachment, the whisk, for the final phase because it was already all mixed together. It's looking pretty good. I'm probably gonna let it go for a little while longer while we make our crust. We're starting with 1 tablespoon of butter, which we're going to melt, and we don't need a pot this big. It's 1 tablespoon. Forgive my awful apartment stove. I'm working on getting something to steam out all this crap, if that is possible. This may actually be one of the worst kitchens in the continental United States. I'm not sure, but only contiguous, you know. Anyway, we need 18 graham crackers, crushed. I did ask when I was like 20 and I made this, Ma, do you mean the individual squares or you mean the whole graham crackers? And she did in fact mean the individual squares. So that's about 4.5 full graham crackers. 4, 8, 12, 16. Because there's 4 crackers to a graham cracker. So I guess save the extra one for a little snack for yourself, I guess. Now there are a couple ways to do this. The easiest way to do this is probably to put it in a bag and get out a rolling pin and just go ham on it. Instead, I'm just going to utilize martial arts and beat it to submission. Jackie Chan, watch out, I'm coming for you. The other way to do this, if your kung fu game is weak, is just to pour the whole thing into a food processor. I'll be honest with you, Internet. I don't know whether I have to grease this pan or not, so I'm greasing it. I've watched enough episodes of Nailed It at this point to be leery about not greasing the pan. So we're just going to grease it. And if it turns out that we were not supposed to grease it, that's fine too. It says add 1 tablespoon of sugar and mix in a bowl with a wooden spoon. So I got out my favorite burnt wooden spoon, throwing 1 tablespoon of sugar in. So far it hasn't said anything about salt, which is interesting. Usually you add 1 teaspoon of salt somewhere in these recipes, but that's okay. Also, I imagine that there's enough sugar in the graham crackers that we probably didn't need to add it, but whatever. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and melt our butter and then pour it over and mix it again. One thing I will note is that while baking is voodoo science, this is actually pretty simple as baking goes. Okay. So once we have the butter, I'm just gonna pour it off in there. And then it says spread evenly at the bottom of the pan and pat down. Notice that there's more, it clumps up, so you really can get more out of this. That's a burn. Maybe don't do this on the stovetop. I have one usable counter in this kitchen, which is why it's in the top 3 most awful kitchens in the contiguous United States. Okay, it's possible that shrinkification has hit graham crackers, I'm not sure. But if I were making this, I would probably add another full graham cracker maybe another graham cracker and a half so that we even it out. But it's fine. Resist the urge to make it pretty, it'll be okay. Now we're just pouring this in. How many spatulas can I use in one recipe? We'll see. If you notice that you have a bunch on the bottom, don't scrape it up and drop it into the cake. That won't be necessary. Just get the liquid stuff up, because you don't want it to clump. Okay, we're gonna put this in our 300-degree oven for 1 hour. Next up, we make the topping. We're gonna start with sour cream, and the recipe calls for 1.5 pints of sour cream, which is about 3 cups. You're gonna start by putting in one of these 1.5 pound containers of sour cream, basically. That's about 2 cups ish, you know, ish. That's a technical term, don't judge me. Then I've got a slightly smaller container of sour cream. Okay, so it's going to be most of one of these little containers too. So to that, we're going to add 1/2 cup of sugar and another 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla before we add in our slight modification. Make sure you do the thing where you wipe down the sides, all that good stuff. Okay. So, this sauce is great because it adds a little bit of acid. Not a lot, but a little bit. And a little bit more sugar, so it gives it a kind of savory, sweet thing. What I want to do now is add in the zest and juice of a lime. So, I've got my zester here. I'm gonna put this bowl there just in case. I've rinsed my limes off and we're just gonna zest our lime. The goal behind this is I'm recording this in late summer and I just kind of want to see if I can summer up the cheesecake a little bit, if that makes sense. Add a little bit more acid, even though the sour cream does add a little acid. Add a little citrus in there. See if I can give it the flavors of summer, which to me is citrus, usually. I like a citrus grog and sometimes a pineapple. And I like to feel like we've just changed this recipe a little bit. There are other versions of this that I've done since my mother gave me this recipe, and it's usually I like to throw fruit in. I've added canned pie filling. I've swapped the crust for time to pull the cake. Let's do that. We're just gonna do the knife trick and it comes out clean. Anyway, like I was saying, I like to add fruits to this. I also have been known to change out the cookie bottom for chocolate or honey or something like that. Honey might work good with this. When it comes to baking, I don't like to make big changes all at once, just because baking is a little bit more scientific than cooking, just in general. Like I said, this recipe isn't really that scientific. It's hard to mess this one up because there's no baking powder or anything. There's no baking powder, no baking soda. There's no real crazy chemical reactions going on as far as I can tell. Anyway, that should be good. We don't want to overdo it. Okay, so I've got the zest of about 1.75 of a lime. I'm going to add the juice of 1 lime, just on the grounds that 2 limes seems like too much given that we already have sour cream. Plus, when I make this, I like to try to vary the color because, you know, it's a lot of white. I'm hoping the green flecks will brighten it up a little bit, you know. Okay, let's give that a taste. I like it. I like it a lot. Ooh. Gotta beat that some more though. Too much zest stuck to the paddle. Maybe I should have saved the zest for the end and put it on top. Is that a thing that we're learning? We'll take this adventure together. If any of you are actually professionals, let me know. Should I have just added the zest on the top? Okay, yeah. It's just gonna keep doing that. That's fine. I know if you're new that you're like, what we? Don't lump me in with you. That's okay. I take full responsibility for my actions. Okay. Now we're gonna put this on top of the cake. Spread to even it out. Okay, she's beautiful. We're gonna stick her back in the oven. Where's my pot holder? Where's the one I was using already? Don't forget that you're not Superman. Around twice a year I forget I'm not Superman. This is going back in, still on 300, for another 5 minutes. Don't drop everything on the floor. 5 minutes later and we're ready to take her out. You should notice that the topping has set a little bit. We are going to stick it in the fridge to cool. I am going to give it a minute though, just so that the pan cools down a little bit. And then we'll pick it up probably in the morning. After 10 hours or so in the fridge, the cheesecake is set and ready to eat. It is breakfast time. I'm going to be late for work, but like, subscribe, click the little bell, make a cheesecake. Pretty good. And I'll see you next Wednesday.